Bob Marley and the CIA, Part 2, with yours truly, David Cupples, Roger Steffens, and Casey Gane-McCalla, all authors who've written about the life and times of Bob Marley. Click on my smiling face on the YouTube page to see Part 1 and my other videos. Find links for Roger, Casey, and I in the description section, as well as my petition for canceling Jamaica's foreign debt, an atrocity for 40 years and running. There's also a GoFundMe youth sports initiative focusing on Negril, Jamaica, where I am as I speak, getting the project set up. 1976, Jamaica is in turmoil. Prime Minister Michael Manley's programs to improve the lives of the people with health care, free education, wage increases, and more, make him beloved by the poor masses and reviled by the establishment, which slanders him as a communist in cahoots with Fidel Castro. Manley is opposed by Edward Seaga of the JLP, a proponent of free market economics favored by the United States. Hostilities between rival street gangs, allied to the political parties, rage into bloody tribal war. As elections approach, Bob Marley agrees to do a free concert, Smile Jamaica, to cool out the violence. This is a crucial, even pivotal time in Jamaican history that I will say more about in a video soon to come, based upon my 2017 Bob Marley lecture at the Global Reggae Conference in Kingston. That video will also go into whether the CIA program against Manley boiled down to Cuba's intervention in Angola, or if there was more to it. You won't want to miss that. All right, enough said. Richard, take us to the top.
Roger Steffens is an historian and author of So Much Things to Say, an oral history of Bob Marley.
Before he had a chance to make all the arrangements, posters started to appear around Kingston saying that Marley was going to do a free show on the lawn of the Prime Minister. And for any singer, musician to be publicly identified with a political party could be, in some cases, suicidal.
Initially, there was a gentleman by the name of Tony Spalding, who was a Jamaican politician, and he actually would recruit Bob to perform for PNP rallies in New York. It was Tony Spalding who actually got Bob to agree to do the Smile Jamaica concert, on the conditions that it was not political. The thing about Bob Marley famously said in a song, he says, "Never let a politician grant you a favor."
So Marley went down the block and confronted Manley, and it was finally agreed between them that he could do a show in National Heroes Park Circle, an outdoor venue, and it would have no political overtones whatsoever. And right after they announced the concert to be held on Sunday, December 5th, 1976, Prime Minister Manley announced that national elections would be held a few days after.
Well, he did set it. He set it for December 15th, and the Smile Jamaica concert was set for December 5. So that really looked kind of suspicious, too. When you put it all together with the first venue being set up at Jamaica House, even when it was at Hope Circle, the posters came out, it said in association with the Prime Minister's office. So it was really a scary time. I'm pretty sure that Bob was really thinking that this was a dangerous situation.
So by appearing on that stage with Bob at that concert, which he was sure to do, it would make Marley appear to be endorsing the re-election of Michael Manley. So he immediately came under death threats from the JLP.
Smile Jamaica, which is a Bob Marley song, as well as the name of the concert, was also being used as the anthem for the PNP. So clearly, whether or not Bob was going along with it, he was being used.
That's Casey Gane-McCalla, journalist, rap artist, and author of Inside the CIA's Secret War in Jamaica. Perhaps Marley had convinced himself that because he believed the concert would be a non-partisan event, that others would perceive it that way too. So, despite threats of violence, he decided to proceed with the free concert. Marcia Griffiths, however, one of his 3 female backing singers, fled Jamaica fearing violence. As a precaution, Marley was guarded 24 hours a day by an armed detail called the Echo Squad, comprised of gangsters from both political factions. Once again, Roger Steffens.
The general feeling was that they needed to be careful. The other I3, Marcia Griffiths, had actually left the country on Wednesday because of rumors that she had heard that they were going to try to shoot Bob at the concert. And her manager insisted that she leave the country. So there were all kinds of things. People had dreams. Judy Mowat had a dream, and Bob himself had a dream in which he saw gunmen coming to shoot his mother. They take dreams very seriously in that African-Jamaican culture down there.
Flash forward to the night of December 3rd, 1976, 2 days before the Smile Jamaica concert. Mysteriously, the Echo Squad, which had shadowed Marley's every move for several weeks, suddenly vanished from Marley's compound. David Cupples is the author of Stir It Up, The CIA Targets Bob Marley and the Progressive Manley Government.
Bob and the Wailers were rehearsing in the back room at 56 Hope Road, Bob's home, and they'd just taken a break. Apparently, Don Taylor had just returned maybe from Miami or something. As I recall, he might have had to pick up a check for royalties or something. But for some reason, he was showing up, and a couple of cars drive in with their headlights off.
Bob previously would have armed guards around his house, 24/7. But at this particular time, there were no armed guards by the house. So there was a team of 2 cars, I think, with maybe 7 gunmen that went into the place where Bob was recording.
And they surrounded the house and started shooting up the place, and Bob thought it was firecrackers. And at that time, a gun pokes into the back kitchen there, and Bob was apparently having a grapefruit, and Don Taylor just arrived and asked for if he could have a little slice of it, and here he comes, and he is interposed for just an instant between Bob and the gunman.
Bob Marley, I think he turned to the side, so he was grazed in the chest and the elbow, but Don Taylor was actually critically wounded.
And he takes all of the bullets. I think he got hit with maybe 5 bullets. And Bob got shot at too, of course. Apparently it was a ricochet. It creased his chest and lodged in his left forearm. Rita was in her little VW and about to escort a couple of kids back home, apparently out to where she lived, out of Bull Bay. And she saw a gunman coming in before even they started shooting. And someone saw her and shot at her and hit her in the head. And it could well be that her dreadlocks saved her life. Don Taylor was really in bad shape. He had to be flown to Miami. He could have died. I'm not quite sure. He might have had a bullet remain in him forever, as Bob did. Bob had that bullet in his left forearm remain for the rest of his life.
So, who wanted Bob Marley dead? Was it the CIA, who feared Marley's power and influence would ensure another Manley and PNP victory? Were the gunmen loyal to Siaga and the JLP? Could they have been acting on behalf of Manley's PNP, hoping to frame the JLP? While there was no shortage of theories, firm evidence was in short supply. Casey Gane-McCalla.
And a few people had, made reports since. So Don Taylor actually said that he went with Bob to a kind of ghetto gun court where they found the assailants and they were actually hung up and they were being tortured. And when asked why they shot Bob Marley, they said they were given cocaine and guns by the CIA.
Yeah, that story has never been confirmed, and in fact his best friend Skill Cole has denied it. I've never found any way to back that story up, even though Taylor put it in his book, but Taylor's book is full of lies. I doubt that happened because Bob was a man of mercy. In the 1978 European tour, a Jamaican came backstage at one of the shows and admitted that he was part of the group that had been assembled to come and kill Bob in 76, but he couldn't find his gun that night, so he didn't come. And Bob not only forgave him, but took him on the rest of the tour with him and gave him a job. So I don't believe that story that Bob watched two people hung. I don't believe that for a second, and neither does Skill Cole, and Skill knew everything about Bob. He was his most intimate contact.
These gangbangers were probably coked up out of their minds. They're maybe really poor guys who were coerced into it. Probably some of them liked Bob, made some bad choices there, really, really bad.
Other people would point to a very notorious figure being present at the time when Marley was shot. This guy was a gentleman by the name of Lester Coke, and he had a nickname Jim Brown after the American football player and action movie star. So certain people like Vivian Goodman, who was Bob Marley's publicist, would say that Jim Brown is actually on the scene of this shooting. He was Siaga's bodyguard, and he was also the kind of Don in Jamaica. Jamaicans are very influenced by like American pop culture. So a popular movie like The Godfather, you have the term Don. So he was, which is a crime lord. So not only was he Edward Siaga's bodyguard, but he was also the Don of Tivoli Gardens, and he was the head of the Shower Posse. And another member of the Shower Posse, a guy by the name Cecil Connor, would claim that the CIA trained him how to bomb and kill and busted him out of prison. And he was another prominent member of the Shower Posse, and he credited his success to the CIA, and he was a very close associate of Lester, Jim Brown, Coke. And there was another gentleman by the name of Seco, who was Bob Marley's percussionist, and he said that he saw what he called Siaga's men at the scene, referring to Edward Siaga, the leader of the Jamaican Labor Party, and he was referring to his armed gang, also known as the Shower Posse.
Yeah, but Michael Manley said that there was no proof of that, none at all. And Manley would have loved to have found proof of that, believe me. But he said the police couldn't find any evidence of that happening.
Miraculously, Bob Marley, his wife Rita, manager Don Taylor, and everyone else at 56 Hope Road that night all managed to survive the hail of bullets. Taylor was by far the most seriously injured. And by failing to kill Marley, the gunman only managed to further increase his iconic stature. Roger Steffens.
Once he defied the gunman's bullets, he went from showman to shaman. It's a phrase that I've used often, but I think it's absolutely accurate. Anybody who can survive a point-blank assassination attempt becomes bigger than life in Jamaica.
So after Bob and Don Taylor got shot, Don Taylor got flown to Miami. Bob was taken to the University Hospital, which is kind of an interesting story in itself, because if it had been a few years earlier and he was living in Trenchtown near Bunny and them, he would have been taken to another hospital where it was notorious that the gangsters would come in and shoot up the place. So it was fortunate they all were taken to University Hospital out at Mona on the campus. And Bob wasn't really hurt terribly, but Rita was hit in the head. She wasn't, it seemed to be lodged just under her scalp and didn't enter her brain, so she was in good shape.
Bob took refuge in Chris Blackwell's home up in the hills above Jamaica, a place called Strawberry Hill. Friends of his came up there and begged him not to do the concert. They were sure that the gunman would come back and finish him off. A lot of powerful people were begging him to stay away.
And the Rastas are there to protect him. There's a police escort. Bob has to decide what he's going to do, so he reasons with the elders. And I do believe that there was a lot of talk about, that Bob shouldn't do it, So having been shot once, Bob didn't necessarily want to go up on the stage in a dark night, with the only lights, the lights that are thrown up to illuminate the place in this vast area at National Circus Park. I think he meditated on it, smoked up some ganja, and talked to the elders.
Toward the end of the day on Sunday, as an ever-growing crowd was gathering in Heroes Park Circle, his wife escaped from the hospital, showed up in a hospital gown, and Bob was talking with his friends about whether he should go down or not, and was inclined not to. And Jeff Walker, his American publicist, said, "Look, Bob, if you don't go down and at least make an appearance, it will be just the same as if they had killed you. They had prevented you from being there. So you've got to go down and at least show up there. And Bob said, I'm not going down there without a machine gun. And Jeff said, Bob, your guitar is your machine gun. And something clicked, and Bob grabbed Rita's hand and said, okay, baby, we're going to go do a show.
He was escorted down in a police car at high speed down the mountains. So Bob's coming down, and apparently the policeman in the back is taking out a compartmentalized machine gun and putting it together to protect him when they reach National Heroes Park. Manley is there. Apparently he and Beverly and their young child are sitting up on the top of a Volkswagen van for the whole concert.
That was one of the driving factors for Michael Manley actually winning that election. Michael Manley was standing on the top of a van as some sort of hero while Bob performed, and, you know, Manley was surrounded by all these gangster gunmen, kind of letting anybody else know, you don't try and shoot Bob again.
There were 80,000 people waiting for him, and instead of just showing up and saying something or singing a song, he did a set that lasted almost an hour and a half. And that, to me, was the most incredible moment in popular music history ever, right to this present day. There's Bob, toward the end of his set, going a cappella, quieting this pickup band he had behind him, because half the Wailers were too afraid to show up. And he goes a cappella, and he puts his hand out in that gesture like he's holding the invisible grapefruit. And he says, if Puss and Dog can get together, what's wrong with you, my brothers? Why can't we love one another? And he's got a bullet in his arm as he's singing those words, and his wife is singing back up to him with a bullet lodged in her skull. I mean, what in the world can you ever compare that to? The most stunning moment in modern musical history.
Political tensions between the two rival parties, the ruling PNP and the opposition JLP, continued despite Marley's appeal for unity at Smile, Jamaica. Shortly after the concert, Marley left Jamaica for a self-imposed 2-year exile in London, England. Casey Gane-McCalla.
So he was obviously very scared, but I think he wanted to show Jamaica and show the world that they couldn't stop him. But after that shooting, he was in England for about 2 years and traveled the world, and it was 2 years before he came back to Jamaica. So he was very scared.
There was a story that Bob was given a message through an intermediary that if he came back, there's going to be trouble that would make the Smile Jamaica assassination attempt look like, a picnic. He left the island to put some space between him and the bullets. Nobody loved life more than Bob. So, his religious side of him was that, sure, he looked forward one day to life in the next dimension, with his God, Rasta. But nobody loved life more than him. He wanted to be alive too, just like all of us.
And he didn't know his life was at risk. And it wasn't until he was able to unite the gangs of the PNP and the JLP that he felt comfortable coming back to Jamaica to even live, let alone perform.
Bob, in 1975, bought Island House from Chris Blackwell and made it his headquarters for his Tough Gong label, and was beginning to build a studio, which was under construction when he was shot. He had a long-term goal of making his Tough Gong organization into a Jamaican version of Motown, a black-owned company with black artists that would be promoted internationally. So Bob hated being away from Jamaica, but he just couldn't understand how people he had actually helped in his life, given him money and things, could come to kill him. He knew who came to kill him. He saw them. And so when these two gangsters came to London in the beginning of 1978, he was very leery, and it took a lot of convincing on their part, because they controlled what went on in Jamaica, to convince Bob that it was safe for him to come home. and renew his career and finish building the Tuff Gong studio.
Marley fled to England for 2 years in hopes of waiting out the political turmoil back in Jamaica. It was during his self-imposed exile that Marley sustained an injury to his big toe during a makeshift soccer match. During examination of the toe, doctors found something else. Bob Marley had cancer. David Cupples.
He was diagnosed with it, I think, in 1977. In fact, I think it was July 7th, when the two sevens clash, 7/7/77. I think it was Pee Wee, his doctor friend, who took him to have it checked out.
Bob used to like to play soccer, and he would always look for a local team or informal group of people to play with in the afternoon of his shows. And his European tour of 1977, which was slated to be the biggest tour in the history of reggae, began in Paris, and he played a team of French music journalists. And one of them had steel spikes on his shoes and accidentally stepped on Bob's right foot in the heat of the game, and the spike came through the leather of the shoe right through the big toenail of Bob's right foot, and he was carried off the field. And subsequent to that, blood tests were taken, and it was discovered that Bob Marley had melanoma cancer that was already at the third stage.
They were giving him a choice that you had to amputate it, and Bob didn't want to amputate it because, well, for one thing, the Rasta says you shall not pierce your skin with the blade. He also probably didn't want to, be a little bit of a cripple up there when he's dancing on the stage. That's a big part of his expression.
Some people trace it back to the European side of his family where it could have been, and there's other people who have even alleged that the CIA kind of poisoned him somehow, which I found a lot of rumors about this, but I haven't found any documentary evidence. I mean, it seems like something that could be plausible, but I haven't found any reputable witnesses or documents. The interesting thing is that Carl Colby, who was the son of William Colby, who was the director of the CIA, was actually on the film crew for the infamous Bob Marley for the Smile Jamaica concert where Bob Marley performed. So the footage you're getting, Carl Colby, the son of William Colby, was actually doing it. And because of this, there has been a rumor that it was William Colby gave Bob Marley a pair of tainted cleats. This would have been in 1976. And when he wore those tainted teats and they gave him cancer, which seems a little interesting. It would have took 5 years for the cancer to develop. It's, I've heard of, biological warfare, but that's nothing I can really give any credence to. There was recently a fake story that someone posted that a CIA agent admitted to killing Bob Marley, and a lot of people shared it, but it was not a reputable source.
So this stupid rumor that the CIA paid somebody to poison his boot and step on Bob's foot, that's another piece of absolute nonsense. You can't give someone melanoma, and neither does melanoma arise from injuries. But this was a toe that had been damaged from his earliest childhood over and over again. He liked to play soccer barefoot in Jamaica, in fact, and he was always getting stepped on. Anyhow, the doctors told him that if he wanted to live, he'd better amputate that foot. But because it had already reached third stage when they discovered it, they couldn't give him 100% guarantee that amputation would stop the spread. So he decided only to have a little piece of the toe removed, and he had a skin graft from his thigh, and he wore a plastic cup over the toe for the rest of his life. But he didn't go to all the regular checkups that he was supposed to have. Cindy Breakspear would say, isn't it time for your every 3-month checkup, Bob? And Bob would say things like, what, you want me for dead? You're trying to kill me? It metastasized ultimately into his lungs and his brain.
They were thinking about natural health care, alternative health care treatments, and they were thinking about going to the place where Steve McQueen had gone down in Mexico. And apparently they were going to do that, and then Steve McQueen died. And they said, well, we better not do that. So they went off to this guy in Germany.
The end of October, early November, he went to a clinic in Bavaria run by a controversial doctor named Joseph Issels. And Issels kept him alive until May of the following year. It was said that Issels had been an SS Nazi doctor, which caused a lot of conspiracy theories. And his wife, I quote her in my new book, In So Much Things to Say, about his background. In fact, he was an SS Nazi at one point. He got his medical degree in 1933 and went to work for a Catholic hospital in Germany. And they told him in order to advance his career, he should become a Nazi and join the SS, which he did. And in 1938, they ordered him not to treat any more Jewish patients. And he refused, and he was kicked out and put in the army and put on front lines in the Eastern Front, and was eventually captured by the Russians and held there, prisoner of war camp, till the end of World War II. So that story is quite different from the rumors that continue to spread to this very day.
Apparently, Bob went there in good faith, and they tried to do his natural treatments. Apparently, it kept him alive longer than, the natural foods, and I guess there was some more radical sort of treatments. The people there liked him, but he was really wasting away. And finally, the doctor says, there's not much more I can do for you. And Bob headed home.
Bob wanted to return to Jamaica. He made it as far as Miami, where his mother lived, and he was too sick to go back to Jamaica. They put him in a hospital there for a couple of days, and on the morning of May 11th, 1981, he passed away, surrounded by his family. And at that moment, in Jamaica, in the home of Judy Mowat, one of the I3, a bolt of lightning came through the window and lodged for a second on the metal frame of a picture of Bob Marley she had on a mantelpiece there. She's confirmed that, and so has another woman, the wife of Bob's doctor, Mrs. Fraser, who was in the room and said she saw it happen too, so I believe that. Judy said it was a signal that one of the Earth's great spirits had transcended to the celestial plane.
After Marley's state funeral in Kingston, his body was laid to rest in a mausoleum in the mountaintop hamlet of 9 Miles, Marley's birthplace. His body remains above ground, entombed behind Ethiopian marble. Marley's mother insisted that her son be neither buried nor displayed until she received a sign that the world is a better place. Beneath Marley's head, a Bible is opened on the 71st to 74th Psalms. He faces west towards a stained glass window featuring the Star of David and, ultimately, Ethiopia. How to sum up Marley's musical legacy? Casey Gane-McCalla.
I think Bob Marley left a very great legacy in terms of fighting for the rights of, the poor and oppressed people, whether they be of African descent or of the Rastafarian belief like he is, or of any other belief or of any other background. I think his legacy, he resonates with people in Eastern Europe and Asia, wherever you have people being oppressed, where you have people wanting to be free, or wherever you want people having fun, wherever you want people to fall in love. It's amazing. He's still the top-selling reggae artist, still almost as popular now as he was when he died, which was more than 37 years ago.
He's a great world hero. He's up there with Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali and Mandela, and I hope people don't take that too literally and react like I'm being crazy, but he faced the bullets for the people. His writing is really more powerful in a way than Bob Dylan, who just won the Nobel Prize for Literature, which I think is deserved. But, I think Bob deserved it just as much, if not more. He wrote about poverty. He wrote about love. He wrote about suffering. He wrote about Johnny getting shot down in the street from a stray bullet just because of the system. And that's just incredibly brilliant. The idea that this Jamaican boy was shot down by accident, but it was a system that did it, because what that system does is it turns brother against brother. Classic divide and rule. The anguish is so great that we turn on each other. But it would be really nice if Jamaica acknowledged that he is a national hero.
As long as people are suffering, as long as people are looking for reinforcement in their revolutionary struggles, they will be guided by the words and anthems of Bob Marley. He is a true artist for the ages, and I think the most important musical artist of the 20th century, without question.
soldier, soldier. Ready to fight, this your only Armageddon. Selassie I soldier. Jah soldier, Jah soldier.